Mary had a little lamb.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
We do have breaking news to tell you about of the worst variety. There's been another deadly mass shooting in America, the second in less than 2 weeks. Overnight, police say a gunman opened fire inside a Southern California bar that was filled with college kids. There are 12 people dead, including a sheriff's deputy. Authorities say there are more injured. They don't have the numbers yet. The suspected gunman is dead.
The largest mass shooting in this country in 12 days.
12 days.
Let that sink in. Police say hundreds of people were inside the bar, college students, as Allison said. The bar was hosting a college country music night. Witnesses describe a scene of sheer panic. People were ordered to get down to the ground once the gunfire rang out. Others broke windows in order to escape, and one of those killed was a sergeant, 29 years on the force, Ron Heelis, who was the first law enforcement officer to confront the shooter. He is now dead. 29 years on the force.
Let that sink in. You want to know the truth? This morning when I heard that, that this was the second mass shooting in 12 days, I couldn't remember what the last mass shooting was about. And I had to sit there and rack my brain and go through all the mass shootings I could remember and which was the last one. And of course it was the one in Pittsburgh, the synagogue, 11 people shot there. That's how ridiculously sick this country is with guns. That's how sick it is. You can't, this is my job, and I can't remember which mass shooting came before. What was it, the Kroger shooting? Well, that's not a mass shooting because he only shot 2 people. Got to shoot 4 in order for it to be a mass shooting. So it can't be the Kroger. Can't be the one where a white guy killed 2 black people in a supermarket for no apparent reason in front of one guy's grandchild and another woman in the parking lot. It can't be that way. So which one was it? Which one? That's how sick it is. And what we have here today is an ex-Marine killing a police officer. Which side do you think the NRA will be on there? Ooh, that's a conundrum. Here you got an ex-Marine shooting a police officer who was 54 years old, Deputy Heelis, ready for retirement. He was just about to retire. He was going to go back to school. He was going to get a graduate degree. He actually trained other people in gun safety. That's what he did, and he has a family who he spoke to right before he got the call to go into this college bar where a Marine was very, quiet. He didn't say anything. He just walked in, apparently just randomly started picking off people. When is this going to stop? You know what the answer is? Not until we get serious about gun control. It's just the way it is, and no one wants to talk about it. I mean, they'll be talking about video games. They'll be talking about religious freedom. They'll be talking about the Me Too movement, pissing off women, and the incels, can't get a date, and that's why they sit here and they plot and they plan to pick off girls and, kill them. And they'll talk about anything. People are shooting people with guns. You are not going to solve problems by allowing pastry chefs to refuse service to gay couples, okay? That is not what the problem in America is. If you had a brand of canned food that was poisoning people, even if it was dog food, you wouldn't first talk about distribution networks of supermarkets and the culture of the canning industry. You would take the damn thing off the shelf, the thing that is poisoning, dogs or people. You would take it off the shelf, but we cannot do that. We cannot do that because of this.
There's 2 focuses. There's one that I've heard: run, hide, and dial 911. That's one aspect. And there's another aspect, whereas you confront the shooter directly. And we've seen a lot of success with confronting the shooter directly. And we look at what happened with the 9/11 hijackers in Pennsylvania, for example. There's so many people at that location. If they converge on the shooter, it'll stop it. Granted, someone may get shot, but the truth of the matter is this will decrease the carnage far greater than if you look to run, hide, and dial 911.
It's our fault. We're supposed to rush the shooter. Don't you get it? It's our fault. It's our fault. We need to be armed at all times. So if you're going to a church, if you're going to a synagogue, or now if you're going line dancing, you'll be negligent if you're not carrying an automatic weapon at all times. This is sick. This is twisted. And they won't stop.
Do you believe that the security people have to have guns? Do you believe they should? Do you believe they do?
You know, Brian, I know this this sadly becomes a very politically charged question for some of the viewers, but I just ask you to think about it in common sense terms. What's your other option? In other words, there's hundreds of millions of firearms out there now that people have procured, whether they can legally get them or not. What do you do? I mean, what are you going to use against? I mean, I don't understand what you think your other options are if someone like this deranged individual shows up with a firearm intent on murdering, you know, tens or hundreds of people in some cases. What are your choices? We're not, Brian, let's be clear here. We're not talking about good versus bad choices. We're talking about bad versus worse choices. I get the politically charged atmosphere. I've been in it for a long time. But I ask you, yeah, the answer is yes. You have the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a firearm. If you have another way to do it, I am all ears. I've yet to hear one. That's why the President of the United States, Democrats, Republicans, whoever they are, and the most important people in the world are protected with firearms. Your kids are entitled to the same.
All right, here's my deal. Republicans. You want guns for all? I want Medicare for all. If you get your way, which you've been getting, guns for all, then you can see the need for health care for all. Can't you? I mean, can't you? That's a direct connection, yeah? You're going to have guns everywhere and guns all the time and guns in churches and guns in synagogues and guns in school. You want guns. You really need the health care if you're going to have all these guns. You're really going to need it. You are. You're going to need it. So, I mean, essentially all the conservative talking points on the continuous mass murders in this country boil down to the same thing. Nothing to see here. Let it lie. Because that's what I always say when someone gets shot. Let it lie. Don't say anything. Let's not talk about guns, because we want to talk about the culture first. We want to talk about the industry first. We want to talk about manufacturing. We want to talk, not to take the thing that's killing you off the shelves. Oh, no. Let's talk about, how negligent you are for not rushing the shooter with your own gun. I mean, this is just so sick, at least the shooting. We'll give the president another opportunity to say something right. Thoughts and prayers? No, you're more likely to get empathy out of a magic 8-ball than you are out of this president. So, okay, that's what happened today. And I swear to you, it's so freaking bad that I could not remember the last mass shooting, which one it was, because there were so many of them that it took me a minute to go through the timeline in my head. What's the last one? What was the last? Oh, right, it was the synagogue. Holy crap, man. People are shooting people with, this was a bucolic little neighborhood. This was a bunch of college kids. This was, a country western night. Well, yeah, it's whatever. I mean, let's keep things the way they are. We have a status quo, and we must respect it, and that is the wholesale slaughter of innocent people. All right, everybody. All right. Oh, my God.
We have identified the suspect. Approximately an hour ago, the suspect was identified as Ian David Long, I-A-N.
Ian.
David Long, a birth date of March 27th, 1990. He was 28 years old.
28.
We've had several contacts with Mr. Long over the years, minor events such as a traffic collision, He was a victim of a battery at a local bar in 2015. In April of this year, deputies were called to his house for a subject disturbing. They went to the house, they talked to him. He was somewhat irate, acting a little irrationally. They called out our crisis intervention team, our mental health specialist, who met with him, talked to him, and cleared him, didn't feel that he was qualified to be taken under 5150, and he was left at that scene last April.
Jesus.
Deputies are at the house now. They have secured the residence, and they're seeking a search warrant to do a thorough search of the house. The weapon used in this horrific shooting was a Glock 21 .45 caliber handgun. The handgun is designed to hold, in California, 10 rounds and 1 in the chamber. This weapon did have a extended magazine on it. We do not know at this time how many rounds were actually in the weapon or how many rounds the magazine could actually hold, because it's still being processed as part of the evidence.
Can I just tell you that when I heard that the mental health people were called to his house, a 28-year-old guy from the Marines, obviously suffering from some sort of PTSD or some sort of an anger, aggression issue. The police were there. They couldn't get this guy to come out of the house. He lives with his mother. Hello, red flag. Lives with his mother. His mother has constantly told the neighbors she's worried because he wouldn't get help. The neighbor said, I asked her, can he just get help? And she said he can't get help. The police were called to the house. Why? Because the neighbors heard all this loud boom, boom, smash, smash, boom, boom, right? What they heard was him kicking in the walls. They heard him punching through walls, kicking through walls. The neighbors were aware when the police came to the house. The neighbors were aware that he needed professional help. And when the police actually did come, they couldn't get him to leave the house. They couldn't get him to come out of the house. But the mental health professionals observed him, and they decided not to put him in for further observation. The neighbors constantly complained about loud noises that sounded like he was damaging the house. The Marine Corps released a statement today, condolences to the victims. He apparently served from 8 to 13. He did like a year in Afghanistan. His last post was in Hawaii. Listen, if we can't pry the guns out of your hand and ask you to please keep them at a hunting club, a shooting club, the military will do that. You know, they won't let me have the weapon on the base, has to go in the armory. And of course, if my job description doesn't require any kind of a weapon, guess what? Military or no, you don't get one. But if you do get one, when you go on the base, you got to put it in the armory. Why can't we do something like that? You want access to your guns? Fine. You like to shoot? Great. Go to the gun club. Check out your weapon. Everybody will know where you are when you have it, that you're okay, they've seen you. Oh, this is just unbelievable. So this guy apparently killed himself. He was found dead of an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. We lost not only a Marine who slipped through the cracks, but we also lost a sheriff's deputy who was just about to be retired, and we lost 11 college-age students who just went out to have some innocent fun. One of the fathers of one of the dead boys ripped my heart out, just ripped my heart out, talking about his son who will never, ever come home.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
This is a heart that I'll never get back. I'll never get back. I talked to him last night before he headed out the door. First thing I said was, please don't drink and drive. Last thing I said was, son, I love you. That was the last thing I said. I thank everybody that has said, had their hearts out for my family since this morning I've talked. And I'm so sorry to come to you guys and tell you that my life has changed now forever. And on that, everybody's has their rights. We all live in a free world here. United States of America is for everybody. Guns are in the wrong hand. So
guns are in the wrong hands, you think? Does anybody think that? Does anybody? No, they should be in everybody's hands, is what it is. What if I forced you to breathe my secondhand smoke? Because it's my right. What if I did that? It's just, what if I put butter in all your food and you had a heart? You know what I mean? What is this? I don't understand why we cannot have a. But again, I'll make you the deal. I will make you the deal. You give me health care for every single American, which we're gonna need, so that guys like this could get mental health care. They could get some sort of attention and some sort of serious look-see before. Okay, you give me that. Give me the health care. I'll let everybody have a gun. Everybody. Toddlers. I'll start training them at 2. Not really, but it's an idea. Karen in California.
Hey, Randy.
Hi.
I'm so pissed because this is the second time a mass shooting happened because the damn sheriff's office lets these guys off.
Yeah, didn't you have another?
Elliot Rogers.
Yeah.
Elliot Rogers. Because it's actually the third time because we had another shooting where they let these guys off without 5150 them. My son is autistic. Was 5150 by LA County Sheriff because he made a quote unquote threat. I had to get him out of a damn psychiatric hospital, a private one, who wanted to milk us for our insurance for making a damn threat, which falls into a gray area in the law. But this guy's tearing up his damn house. Oh, no, we're not going to do that. We're not even going to check him for weapons. Elliot Rogers was the same way. He had weapons, and they didn't even do a damn weapons check. We have a law here that says that if somebody is a danger to self or others, remove their weapons. How did he get an extended mag? They're illegal in California.
Yeah, they are. I know, and he did have them.
And I'm floored. I am familiar with the damn system because I have a family member who's been through the damn system. She's been through 3 times. She's been 5150. And, the problem is these sheriff's deputies are not trained. And a lot of them don't have MET teams, mental health evaluation teams, where a member of the the Department of Mental Health goes out with these deputies to evaluate people. And these deputies are not well trained, and they just let these guys go. And it's a danger because, let's face it, deputies are, law enforcement are not trained for psychiatric problems.
They shouldn't be. This is what, here's...
It's not their job.
Right, it's not their job. And it's the same thing with teachers. It's not their job. And everybody wants them all to now be... The teachers have to be police officers and mental health experts. The police officers have to be peace officers and mental health experts. Honest to God, this is crazy. This kid's mother, obviously, knew.
I know.
Right? And she should be able to call, a mental health facility or call the VA or call some,
there's nobody.
Right. And just pick up the phone and say, my son is an Afghan war vet. He's a Marine. He was a machine gunner. He is a decorated combat veteran. And he's acting erratic. He's been kicking in the walls. The whole house is full of holes in the walls. And, the neighbors are complaining because they can hear him losing his stuff. And I know he has a gun. Please, can you come? And they ought to be able to take him to a VA center, or they ought to be able to take him to an outpatient situation where, where people can be treated for hyperaggression, anger issues, whatever. Instead,
oh, God, no.
This is crazy. But they want guns everywhere. everywhere. Everybody should have one. Everyone should have one, regardless.
Not in California, but here's the thing with California. I live in Los Angeles County. Okay. All the hospitals have closed their psychiatric units. The only 2 psychiatric units in Los Angeles County within hospitals is County USC and UCLA Harbor. So hospitals around here don't have psychiatric units. Why? They're not profitable. They're not profitable. And no rich person wants to put their damn name on a fucking psychiatric unit.
Well,
so,
you know,
not enough beds.
It's such a predictable combination of stuff. How could people not see it? You know, how could people not understand that you obviously, when you have somebody with anger issues who's kicking in mom's walls and is still living at home at 28 years old and has guns, that is like a big red flag. I don't get it. This other guy, Elliot Rogers, I forget what he did because there's so many of them. What happened?
Elliot Rogers was having his parents reported him for odd behavior, and the deputies went out, but they didn't go into his home. They didn't. He was good at putting on a good face, and so they walked away. They didn't go into his home because he was posting things on social media that was very aggressive and very, And his parents said, "Hey, wait a minute," and they called Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department. And they just, he went on, oh, no big deal. And so they walked away because they didn't have a MET team, which, like I said, mental health evaluation team.
Is he the incel dude? He's the incel dude. Right. Yep. I remember him. He actually put up a video. I have it. It's so scary, this video. I have it. Him sitting in his car saying to the world that he was going to kill girls because they wouldn't give him the time of day. And that this was his plan and he was going to do it and here's what he was going to do. And he freaking did it.
Well, here's our story. I had a family member who was suicidal 3 times, was 5150. That person had a gun. We took the gun. My husband and I took the gun. And because we were worried about that person. Not once. And that person was a registered gun user. It was registered and everything. Not once did Orange County Sheriff call us asking us, where's the gun? Never once. Nobody ever asked about that gun.
Listen, we have a status quo in this country that cannot be disturbed, and that is the mass slaughter of people at the hands of people who should not have guns that continually fall through the cracks of various police officers when these people's parents, wives, loved ones, whatever, friends say, this kid is about to go completely, off the rails, and nothing gets done. And then all of a sudden, you got, a whole bunch of dead kids in school. You got a whole bunch of dead people in a church. You got a whole bunch of people dead in a synagogue, and now you got a whole bunch of, line dancers dead in a bar.
Well, like I said, in Los Angeles County, the only 2 hospitals that have psychiatric units is the 2 I mentioned. The rest are handled by private psychiatric facilities. My son was placed in one against all logic. And when I went there to get him out after lots of threats, I noticed that they had more administrative staff than they had
doctors.
Staff. Yeah. And it was shocking. They were letting homeless people in to eat in their cafeteria because they get paid for that. But the patients had to earn the privilege, quote unquote, earn the privilege to eat in the cafeteria. It was shocking. My mother and I, when we were there to get my son out, we're like, oh, my God. They had little kids in this facility, most likely foster children, to get paid. And what they do is they hold on to you. My son had not even been fully admitted because I refused to sign any paperwork. Again, I am familiar with the system. They had already submitted a letter to my insurance company asking to hold him for 2 more weeks without evaluating him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have it here with drug rehabs. Okay. We have it here. This is Florida.
We have it here too in California.
Yeah.
We have it in California with the drug rehab.
It's unbelievable. Florida is the point of exit and entry into drug addiction. They get you addicted here at the pain doctors, and then they rehab you at the rehab center. And then they send you to the halfway house, which is not regulated. And we have all these,
California.
yeah, and we have all these people just walking around with the cravings and everything, not completely, in the pink cloud, whatever, thinking and then all of a sudden they go out and they use, and guess what? They end up with, some guy with a gun, and it's a recipe for disaster. But you know what? This is Florida. What do we,
and California has the same problem. We have the drug rehab Riviera here.
Yeah.
And it's contributing to our homeless problem. The Orange County Register did an awesome. Orange County Register of all papers.
Yeah.
Did an awesome series on the drug rehab Riviera, because the one downside to the ACA is it pays for the drug rehabs, but they're completely unregulated in California. Along with the sober living homes, which can spread up in any neighborhood here.
Yeah.
And it's the same problem.
Yeah, we have it here too. Same way.
Yeah, and it's the same thing. And see, California is highly regulated on guns, but and Jerry Brown just signed legislation on the drug rehabs, but guess what? It doesn't make it a felony. It just says, you can lose your license. Big whoop. They don't care. They'll just bring up with a new name and another license.
But this is the whole idea. This is the whole problem. This is the whole idea behind making medical care a not-for-profit industry. Okay,
exactly.
As soon as you start building the profit motive into things like medical, mental health care or rehabilitation or private prisons, guess what? You need customers in order to be profitable. So you create them. You literally create them.
It's like the whole thing with the kidney dialysis proposition.
Yeah.
That people voted against. They don't realize DaVita makes a ton of money off of kidney. Why is that even a chain?
Yeah.
For kidney dialysis, what the hell is that? And they didn't want to pay their workers.
Right.
Same with the ambulance company.
Right.
That they put on that damn ballot, and I couldn't believe people actually voted for that. It's like they're trying to weasel out of paying their workers. And
definitely. There's no question about it. And it's the people that would tend to you that really are getting stiffed over and over and over again. And it's the people who own the four walls and the windows that are being enriched by this. And so, it's a real sick system. The system itself is so sick, which is why I say I'll make you a trade. You could have your guns, but you're going to give me a not-for-profit healthcare system. And you're going to give it to me because we need it right freaking now to solve three-quarters of the problems that we have with mental health and guns.
Well, people are so stupid. They don't see insurance for what it is.
No.
I used to work for an insurance company. I used to work for AIG. I used to work for one of the biggest in workers' comp. People are stupid. It's like, hey, idiots, you're paying for a really expensive coupon book. Okay? You're still paying monster amounts of money for premiums, and you're still paying out of pocket for co-pays, deductibles, prescriptions. Why are you, have you not looked at how much you're paying in premium? You shouldn't be paying for anything out of your own pocket. But you guys still cling to this because it's the way you've always done it, because God knows human beings hate change. And, you're paying for marketing.
You know what kills me?
They,
of course you're paying for marketing. Look at, when you watch the news, okay? Just do a little experiment. Make a little hash mark every time you see a pharmaceutical commercial for anything. Or
an insurance company commercial.
What do you think those commercials cost? They're like $800,000 a minute. A minute.
Exactly.
So who do you think is paying for that? So that you could ask your doctor about Taltz. You could ask your doctor about Humira. You could ask your doctor about, Zetia. You could ask your doctor about Xeljanz. Come on. This is crazy. This is nuts.
That one with McDreamy and all those actors in it, from the TV shows for HealthNet. I see that one. I'm like, yeah, look at how much they're paying them and how much for that big beautiful commercial, and you're paying for that from HealthNet, whose marketing budget is how much?
Right.
And that's where your money is going, people.
And still these insurance companies are billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar profits every single year.
Insurance companies never lose money.
They never do. And we still, can't get, anything to, make sure that we're covered for, a gunshot wound. Really?
Insurance companies will never lose. I told you, I worked for AIG, and let me tell you, they never lose money for a reason. That's how they're built. That is the basis of their business. They will raise premiums over them losing $1.
I know. Thank you, Karen.
No problem.
Thank you. It's upsetting when you've even come in contact with anything having to do with the system of trying to get proper help for somebody who you know needs it. The whole thing is rigged against people, and then we see this carnage. What did he say at his inaugural? Oh, the carnage ends now. Really? The carnage has like double, triple, quadruple. And we have how third world does this have to look? Can't you see how third world we're getting? Our government is filthy dirty. Our president is dirty. You got gun violence everywhere. What do you think they're fleeing in Central America? Bad government and gun violence. It's so third world.
To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844.
561-270-3844.
Okay, so this is Elliot Rogers.
On the day of retribution, I am going to enter the hottest sorority house of UCSB. And I will slaughter every single spoiled, stuck-up, blonde slut I see inside there. All those girls that I've desired so much, they would have all rejected me and looked down upon me as an inferior man if I ever made a sexual advance towards them. While they throw themselves at these obnoxious brutes. I'll take great pleasure in slaughtering all of you. You will finally see that I am, in truth, the superior one, the true alpha male. Yes. After I've annihilated every single girl in the sorority house, I'll take to the streets of Isla Vista and slay every single person I see there. All those popular kids who live such lives of hedonistic pleasure while I've had to rot in loneliness for all these years. They've all looked down upon me every time I tried to go out and join them. They've all treated me like a mouse. Well, now, I will be a god compared to you. You will all be animals. You are animals, and I will slaughter you like animals. I'll be a god, exacting my retribution on all those who deserve it. And you do deserve it, just for the crime of living a better life than me. All you popular kids, you've never accepted me, and now you'll all pay for it.
And he did it. He did do it. Because we have a nation of deranged and broken men. We have a nation of a bloody mindedness. We have a nation of violence is the answer, and it comes from the very top now. It didn't always, but it does now. And if we can't wrap our brains around the fact that there are a ton of things missing from our culture, and that is mental health care, and that is being taken seriously when you're afraid of your own child, or having the right to, sort of a situation for somebody who's talking like this, or somebody who's suffering from loneliness to the point of aggression, or somebody who's kicking in their own mom's walls at 28 years old, or somebody that's living in the basement, or somebody that feels bitter and angry and disenfranchised, and there's no help. There's no place to go except to the gun. And the answer from the propagandists is, yeah, well, everybody needs to have a gun now, because we do have a nation of bloody-minded, broken men, and we know it. And you're negligent if you live in a third world country like this, and you don't expect that you're going to be shot, and you're not prepared for it, then you're just negligent. You're just irresponsible, and you deserve to die. That's what Fox is preaching. We have a nation full of blame and grievance, and it's being injected with authority and with permission by a president of the United States, for God's sake. You can't see that we're third world? You can't see that? I got to tell you, this cannot be America's path. It can't be, the way that America keeps going, because America will not survive this. We will destroy ourselves from within. There is no question in my mind that this country is super, super polarized, that we have a lot of angry people, a lot of grievance, a lot of bitterness, a lot of, people who blame others, a lot of people who are deranged, a lot of people who are broken by a system that's unequal and unfair, and no access to any kind of help that is meaningful to anybody. Either if you can afford it, sure, maybe. But if you can't, then you stay deranged, you stay broken. You stay aggrieved, you stay bitter until you can't take it anymore, and you find yourself in a car making a video, laughing with this maniacal, sinister laugh that you're going to slaughter everybody and they will think you're a god, finally. I do want to put out this. Somebody called us, and four people who are listening to this going, I'm in this situation. I don't know what to do. I'm afraid of my child, or I'm afraid of my husband, or I'm afraid of this, and the police don't handle it right. And I just don't, there is an organization called the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, NAMI. And they have a helpline. It's 800-950-NAMI, NAMI. 1-800-950-NAMI. If you want to do it by email, it's info@NAMI.org. Info@NAMI.org. You can also text NAMI to 741-741. Text NAMI, N-A-M-I, to 741-741. They exist in 50 states. They are not for profit. They are made up of, people who have enormous expertise, volunteers, state organizations, local affiliates. They're available in every state. They have community centers and support and education that was not previously available to people who are in need and are suffering through my child needs help, or my brother needs help, or my sister needs help, or my cousin needs help, or my friend needs help, or, he's got an arsenal of guns in his bedroom and he's kicking in walls, or he's angry, or he's bitter, or he's lonely, or he's an incel, he hates women, or whatever it is. And they deal with just about every kind of mental illness, from eating disorders to this kind of, embittered, angry, bloody-minded, disenfranchised, broken man. Bobby in Philly.
Randy, how are you?
Good. Sad.
Me too. First and foremost, Randy, I'm a big fan.
Thanks.
First-time caller. I love you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm a retired disabled Air Force veteran. I retired in 2007, beginning of 2007. I'm currently, and I just want to talk about the VA. I'm currently being treated for mental health services at a VA clinic. I got to tell you, Randy, it's a joke. I'm not here to slam VA, like I said, but it took 4 months just to get an initial appointment.
Right.
When I got the initial appointment, the appointment lasted 15 minutes, gave me some meds, told me to come back in 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Meds don't work. I come back in 3 months. They change the meds, tell me to come back in another 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
However, the doctor's leaving. So there's no doctor there, and I got to do some Skype thing with a new doctor who I'd never seen.
Oh, my God.
My point is, it's hard to get help today. It's now, I'm not suicidal. I don't own guns. It's just not. I've been through traumatic things. I got PTSD, severe depression. But it's not an easy avenue to say, hey, I need help. Where do I go? What do you do? You're just lost out there.
I know. I've seen it. I've seen it with a lot of drug-addicted kids in my neighborhood. I've gotten involved in it. I've seen it with, people who are afraid of their children. You just heard Karen in Whittier. She's got an autistic son who is maltreated by the system, too. That's why we did get this phone call from this guy who is part of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, I want you to write down this phone number and see if he can't help you find something near you to get you feeling better. It's 800-950-NAMI.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I hope
it's
it helps.
a problem, but
it's a
honestly,
horrible
Randy,
problem. I swear to God, it's a horrible.
They got to get rid of the fucking guns. It's just guns. I mean, you got to do something with these guns. The mental health is one issue, all right, but it's the fucking guns.
I know it's the guns. It's like I said, if you had canned food or if you had, arugula that was tainted with E. coli, they wouldn't ask about, farming, and they wouldn't ask about the culture of shipping. They would just take the freaking stuff off the shelves.
Exactly.
Stop killing you, I mean, it's just so unbelievable that you can't get any. But like I said, I'm almost in the mood to trade them. You give me meaningful health care so that you don't need the VA, right? You got to understand, for Medicare for all, you don't need the VA anymore. You have private health care, right? You give me money for mental health. You give me money for addiction. You give me money for, gunshot wounds for everybody, regardless of their ability to pay. And I'll let you have your freaking guns.
Yeah, if everybody's got to have a gun, there's a definite connection with health care. There's no doubt. I'll take that.
How can you not see that there's a direct connection to bullets and wounds?
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
I hear you. I hope that number works for you. I mean, I hope they put you on a path to somebody decent.
It's brutal. I'm
I
just
know.
stuck in La La Land. I mean,
I hear you. My dad had it.
Honest to God, one of the meds they actually gave me was an antihistamine.
Oh, Jesus.
No shit. After I got home, I looked it up. I'm like, what the hell, man?
They just wanted you to sleep through the day, apparently.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because that'll knock you out. Well, try this number. Like I said, as one Air Force vet to another, and somebody whose dad suffered. Back in the day, they called it shell shock or whatever.
Right.
And I swear to God, people are out there desperate for help. They want help. They need help, and nobody ever shows up. Nobody ever does. You know who shows up? The guy with the open trunk and says, "Here, I'll sell you some weapons."
Yeah.
Sick.
Hey, on another quick note, what the hell happened in Florida? Jesus Christ.
So, I'm glad you asked, Bobby, because we are having a recount on everything. Everything.
Really?
Yes. I
didn't even hear that today.
Well, the gun thing, another mass shooting sort of put me off my, but I really want to talk about the fact that Arizona, just so you know, still has 600,000 ballots out, meaning they haven't been counted yet.
Jesus.
So nobody knows who won, between Kristen Sinema and what's-her-face, Martha McSally. But here in Florida, we now know that Senator Bill Nelson is getting a recount, a hand recount, because it's less than 0.25% between him and Rick Scott, who, he's a healthcare violator. This guy owned a hospital chain that ripped people off left and right, biggest Medicare fraud in the history.
He's a scumbag.
He is a scumbag. But anyway, there's a hand recount there, which is very complex and very, and now Gillum is at, anything below 0.5%, you get an automatic recount. Gillum is separated by less than 4.7%. From DeSantis, so there'll be a recount there. And believe it or not, our ag commissioner, that's 0.06% difference. So she's going to, her name's Nikki Fried, she gets a recount. So our whole election gets recounted here.
Well, if you get stuck with this jerk-off governor, he doesn't even want to be the governor down there.
He doesn't. He's a white supremacist.
I know.
Can you imagine, how emboldened biker gangs are going to be down here? How emboldened white supremacists, what is it, Identity Europa and Stormfront and all these freaking sick people that live here? I mean,
I thought after Puerto Rico that I don't know. I just had a feeling that Florida was just going to go hard the other way with us.
Well, it did, but listen. The reason why we got about 100,000 new residents in Orlando, and they were the Puerto Rican, refugees basically, who couldn't stay on the island, and they came to live in Florida, but they went to Orlando because we already had a very large Puerto Rican community in Orlando, so it was a natural.
Did they register? Were they registered?
Yeah, of course they're registered. They're American citizens, and so they did vote, and they were voting Democrat. I will say there were a couple of odd birds, a couple of odd people out.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they were a Democratic voting bloc. So Orlando, is blue. Obviously, Palm Beach is blue. Fort Lauderdale is blue. Miami is blue. Tampa is blue. All the cities where people actually live, Tallahassee is blue. It's the rural places, It's the rural places that they just don't. They don't read newspapers. They don't, they don't understand the world in which they toil.
They're out buying guns, man.
They are. We have gun shows here every single weekend.
They're
Single
everywhere.
weekend.
They're everywhere.
Everywhere.
And they're not gun shows. They're gun sales. I mean,
Yeah.
They're not showing guns. It's a joke.
It's hideous. It's absolutely.
Yep.
I mean, why don't we have mental health fairs every weekend?
There you go.
You want to have a gun show every weekend? Okay, have a mental health fair every weekend. Right? And tell people where they can get that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Open your trunk and there will be a psychiatrist.
Maybe we can set that up outside of a Trump rally.
There you go.
All right, Randy. I love you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bobby. Best of luck to you. Let me
All right,
know.
thank you, dear.
Let me know.
Will do.
Okay. Yeah, you can contact me on randyrhodes.com. There's a button that says contact, and just know, I do read the emails. I read all of them, okay? Ashley helps with the technical stuff. If you have any problems with your podcast, downloading, you don't know which app to use, whatever it is, she's there to help you. But if you wanted to talk to me about, this number I just gave out, which is 800-950-NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, I'll be happy to respond to you. More than happy. But that's my offer. You want your guns, you want your gun shows. Okay, but right next door, there has to be a mental health fair next to the gun show, and everybody gets health care coverage that includes mental health care, and it's free. See that right there? That's a compromise. That's what that is, right there. Because this carnage has got to stop. We are so third world right now.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe it. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Oh, everybody.
4 of the most contentious races, easy for me to say, in Tuesday's midterms, so close that they are still hanging in the balance. Florida, for example, new numbers just in to CNN are within the margins of a recount, which is what Democrats Andrew Gillum and Bill Nelson have been suggesting in governors and Senate races there. Gillum hiring an attorney who litigated the 2000 Florida recount for President Bush. And what about Florida? What are the margins there?
This is astonishing. You have the governor's race there, which just now with the latest vote total, the difference between DeSantis and Gillum there, you say it's 0.5%. It's actually 0.47. We round up there to 0.5. That's within the target zone to trigger an automatic recount in the governor's race. Now, Gillum, you see, is still 38,000 votes behind DeSantis. That is no small feat for Gillum to make that up. And in fact, in the press release, in the statement from the Gillum campaign today that they issued saying every vote needs to be counted, we've hired this lawyer. One thing that was not in the press release, Andrew Gillum did not rescind his concession. He and DeSantis spoke on Tuesday night. He did not rescind his concession here. That's why we have it as a check mark as a DeSantis win, because Gillum actually conceded the race on Tuesday night. But they did say that was in a different context before they knew how much outstanding vote was there. This has now gotten in recount zone.
What about the Senate? What about the Senate seat?
This is even more astonishing. You see here, CNN has not projected a winner here. 17,344 votes separates Scott and Nelson here of more than 8 million votes cast in this race in the state of Florida, Brooke. This is, as you see there, 0.2% difference between the two candidates. Again, well below the 0.5% margin needed to trigger an automatic recount. We have to see where the final numbers come in. Saturday at noon is the deadline in Florida for all the counties to report and for the Secretary of State to issue that initial canvas of what the vote count is. assuming this stays this close, which I've got to believe it's going to, this race is certainly headed for an automatic recount, something that Nelson is eager to get underway and something that the Rick Scott forces are trying to dismiss and want to move on with Governor Scott heading to Washington and preparing to take his Senate seat in January. But this is so close. Everything since Tuesday night has been going Nelson's way here, and I never thought 18 years later we would be talking about Palm Beach
Florida.
County and Broward County and how those ballots were designed and what those vote totals are.
Yep, Florida.
Broward! Yeah, here we are again, 18 years later. It's the 2000 election all over again, and the lawyers are the same, and the issues are the same, and God only knows. Now we have to go through the protest period and the contest period, and then it goes to the court, and oh my God. And there will be a recount. There's a recount in Florida that is automatically triggered, as they explained in that report there, if it's 0.5% difference between the two candidates. And in the Bill Nelson race, it's 0.2. 0.2% of the votes of 8.1 million votes cast, separating Bill Nelson and Rick Scott. In the Andrew Gillum DeSantis race for governor of Florida, it is down to 0.47, okay? It's 4.7%. So here's the ridiculous way that Florida is going to handle. And also, we have two House seats that are so close that we can't call. There'll be a statewide machine recount there. And we also have the agriculture commissioner. There is 0.06 0.06% difference between the Republican and Matt Caldwell and Nikki Fried, who is the Democrat in this race. All right, so check this out. The Agriculture Commission and the Senate race are within the margin that would trigger a hand recount. We have 67 counties. It would be all 67 counties would have to sit there because we're so decentralized here. Everybody does it different. We don't all vote the same in Florida. So in all 67 counties, people will sit there and they will try to hand recount the agriculture commissioner's race and the Senate race. However, in the House races that are, within the margin of error, and in the governor's race that is within the margin of error, there will be a machine recount. Now, if you would think that if they were going to hand recount the Senate and they were going to hand recount the ag commissioner, while they were doing that, they might also hand recount the governor's race and the two House seats. But oh no. That's Florida. Okay. And I learned this the hard way. I learned this back in 2000 with Cruella DeVille, who was our Secretary of State. She parlayed that into a congressional seat, and then she decided she liked being rich more than she liked working. Catherine Harris was her name, and everybody called her Cruella. She was, and she just kept certifying certifying things. And then it got so out of control that it went through the court system. The Florida state courts said, keep counting the votes, keep doing it. That's what the Florida Supreme Court said. And if you believe in states' rights, this is why Republicans are so phony to me, then of course the Florida Supreme Court would have the last word. But oh no. They decided that even though in the Constitution of the United States of America, it doesn't guarantee anybody's right to vote, what it says is the states can choose the manner in which the citizens of that state choose their electors. Meaning the Federalist Society really ought to have been on the side of me, where I said the Florida Supreme Court has the last word. But oh no, the U.S. Supreme Court said only this one time will we make this kind of a decision. Only this one time will we insert ourselves into a state matter like this. But we want you, Florida, stop counting the votes. Just stop. Wherever you are, just stop. And when they ordered the End of the counting. George Bush was 537, literally 8 million people vote in this state, 537 votes ahead, and he became the president of the United States. Now, if you think Kavanaugh and Clarence and Gorsuch and Alito are going to be better than the previous, you're out of your freaking mind, okay? But we don't know where this is going to end up. But that's the situation here in Florida. Georgia, you got a situation too. You got a really, really crazy situation in Georgia. Stacey Abrams has not conceded the race, all right?
In the Georgia gubernatorial race, Democrat Stacey Abrams has not conceded because she says there are still tens of thousands of votes that haven't been counted. Her campaign manager is demanding voter data from Abrams' opponent, who up until today was the Secretary of State.
They need to release all the data, all the numbers, and they need to count every single vote. But you know what? They probably can't, because I don't know that they know where all those votes are. 25,000 votes of nearly 4 million cast are at issue in this race. By his own admission, there are at least 25,000 outstanding votes and hundreds, if not thousands, of more that we are learning about and discovering every day.
Abrams' opponent, Republican Brian Kemp, has now resigned as Secretary of State, but only because he is already declaring himself the next governor of Georgia.
We're in court this morning, still dealing with a lot of these, quite honestly, ridiculous lawsuits, and we're going to continue to fight that. The votes are not there for her. I certainly respect the hard-fought race that she ran, but that's a decision that she's going to have to make. But we've won the race. It's very clear now, and we're moving forward with the transition.
It's incredible. David Challen is with me. He's the director of CNN Politics. And David, I mean, you in Georgia, one side says, hey, you know, we won, I'm the governor. The other side says, not so fast, right? There's all these votes have yet to be counted, voter regularity, this and that. I mean, how close is this to a runoff?
Well, take a look at those numbers right there.
Holy crap.
Brian Kemp, in the official total right now, is 62,000 votes ahead of Stacey Abrams, 50.3% to 48.7%. That's a significant gap there, that 1.6%. So that is a significant gap, but what you hear the Abrams campaign doing here is saying, we don't know the total universe of outstanding votes yet. And until you know that total universe and they are counted, you don't know if that 50.3% drops in Kemp's total to something less than 50% plus one, because as you just said, Brooke, that's the key that triggers a runoff race. If Brian Kemp gets below 50% plus one, there's a December 4th runoff. That's the rule in Georgia. I know Brian Kemp was out there. He resigned his office. He's trying to express confidence that there's nothing to see here and he's moving on with the transition. But it's just until you know the total universe of outstanding vote and what that is, and then how those votes break, you don't know if indeed he does have the right threshold. It looks like this would be an uphill climb for the Abrams campaign to get Kemp that low in the vote total, but it's just not a known factor right now.
It isn't. Nobody knows. He is 0.3% away from a runoff election. 0.3% of a runoff election, and they can't account for 25,000 ballots. Now, I did want to say this. If you're in Florida and you voted on a provisional ballot, meaning you didn't have ID that they accepted, or they didn't like your signature, or you voted in a gated community and they accepted your driver's license at the gate, but they didn't like your signature when you signed it, whatever. Because everyone can vote. Everyone can vote, but some people have to vote on what they call a provisional ballot. If you voted on a provisional ballot in Florida, you need to contact the supervisor of elections office today. I'll give you the phone number, so get ready to write it down. And the reason why is because if you didn't have the ID that they liked or that they approved and they handed you a provisional ballot, or you didn't have ID at all, but you said, I'm not going back home. I stood online for 2 hours. I'm just going to go ahead and vote provisional. If you have ID, you have an opportunity now to show it so that your ballot will then count in the total. So the supervisor of election for all 67 counties, okay, the one local number that can help you figure out where you go in your community to show your ID or whatever the issue was to fix that issue that forced you to vote on a provisional. The number's 833. I tweeted this out too. So you could check my Twitter feed at Randi Rhodes. If you need this number, it's there. But if you didn't, 833-868-3352. 833-868-3352. One more time. 833-868-3352. If you voted on a provisional ballot. Also, if you did a mail-in in Florida, I tell you, they throw 1 in 10 mail-ins away because they don't like your signature. We have exact match here, too. If you would like to know whether or not your mail-in counted, you can go to the Supervisor of Elections website. You could put in your first name, your last name, and your birth date. And it will tell you when they received your ballot, but it won't. For me, I can't figure out whether they counted it or not on that website because I've been checking my mother's, and it tells me that her ballot did make it to the supervisor's office like on October 24th, and it was, there on time, but it doesn't tell me if they counted it, if they liked her signature, they didn't like her signature. Call the supervisor's office and ask them. Every vote obviously matters here.
Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
Andrew Gillum just rescinded his concession. Yeah, he said there are many more uncounted ballots than was originally reported, and he rescinds his concession. So when David Chalian was doing that reportage that we played, he had not yet rescinded, and so that's why you heard that. But he has since rescinded his concession, and they will go to a recount. Now, Arizona, you might be shocked to know this, but there are still 600,000 ballots out, meaning 600,000 ballots have not been counted at all in Arizona.
Arizona, we know history will be made because they will have their first, female senator between Kyrsten Sinema and Martha McSally. Also, close.
Yes. Here, we only have, as you see there in the bottom right of the board, there's 75% of the vote in. There's still a chunk of outstanding vote. By our estimation, we think there are some 600,000 votes still outstanding to be counted in this Arizona race. You see Martha McSally, the Republican, with a 17,000 vote lead here. We are expecting the biggest, the most populous county in Arizona, Maricopa County around Phoenix, to report their vote totals later today. So that should give us a sense of where this race is headed. But until we have that, which is a Sinema stronghold, that Phoenix area, we won't know exactly the status of this race.
It is just so interesting how all these men was breathlessly standing in front of these, magic maps on election night, and somehow they missed these stories. I mean, I vote here in Palm Beach County. Okay, this is ground zero for not having your votes count. So when I'm watching everybody breathlessly touching their magic screens and telling me it's all done and Scott won and Gillum lost and, Arizona's done and, McSally won. And, I'm sitting there going, I don't think so. I don't think that's right. And, when I tell my guys, King, what's his name? King in front of his board, he's wrong. I tell them all the time. But, you see it on TV. And if it happened on TV, if it didn't happen on TV, it didn't happen. And I'll come in the next day and I'll go, yeah, but that's not right. Whatever they said last night, that's not true. That's just not true, okay? It isn't, that's not what's happening. And they'll tell me, well, they said it on TV. Yeah, but there's 600,000 votes that haven't yet been counted in Arizona. How does anybody make a prediction about who's going to win that race when there's 17,000 votes separating the two candidates, but 600,000 have not yet been counted? This blows my mind, okay? I just got to say. Here in Florida, I got to say 1 in 10 of the mail-ins get tossed. Provisional ballots are rampant because they don't like your signature. I mean, Scotty had to sign his name. He's 35 years old. His hands don't shake, okay? He's a young, vital buck. And here he is having to sign his name 3 freaking times to please the poll worker who's not a handwriting expert. I mean, thank God he did in-person voting, because we don't know, whether or not his vote would have counted, because they didn't like his first signature. They didn't like his second signature. This is ground zero for not having your vote counted. So now we got all these recounts going on for almost every single race. 2 House seats, an agriculture commissioner, the Senate race, and the governor. Arizona, not a clue. 600,000 ballots, not even counted. Georgia, they don't even have a paper trail. How are they going to do a recount? Well, they can't. And that's why they have a runoff instead. And this man that claims to have won the Georgia Goober race, who's also the Secretary of State, who just recused himself today, because there can't be a recount, right? So what the hell do I have to lose by recusing myself today to appear to be fair? Brian Kemp ran this whole dog and pony show of an election. They can't find 25,000 ballots, number one. And number two, he's 0.3 of a percentage point ahead of Stacey Abrams with all these missing ballots. I think you're going to have a revote in Georgia. I don't know. We'll see. But these are 3 places that are so... I mean, it's like within the proverbial, hair, okay? Separating all these candidates. Oh, my God. 0.06. 6/100ths of 1%. Separating a Republican from a Democrat in this here state. Oh, my God. This is, I'm telling you, it's third world. You don't get, I look at the shootings. I look at the violence. I look at the attitude of these embittered, broken, angry men. It's an epidemic in this country. You look at the president who doesn't follow the law, who just, doesn't follow the law of succession for the Attorney General. The Attorney General of the United States of America. There is a statute, and it clearly lays out the order of succession. It clearly says that if the Attorney General is unable to finish his term, then the deputy becomes the Attorney General. And if the deputy can't, then the assistant deputy does. And if the assistant deputy, the Solicitor General does. And if the Solicitor General can't, then the assistant does. I mean, it's just a statute. It's not even long. I mean, I was pouring through these legal articles trying to understand. And then I said, you know what? I was talking to Scotty this morning. We were discussing the show. And somebody in one of the Lawfare articles, okay? They're asking the question, is the appointment constitutional, this Whitaker creature? And they cite the law, okay? They say 28 U.S.C. Section 508. So it's a clickable link. I click on this article is 6 pages long explaining whether or not it is or is not constitutional. So I said, you know what? Let me just read the law. This is the law. It's a quarter of a page. It's not very difficult. Here's what it says. In case of a vacancy in the office of Attorney General, or of his absence or disability, the Deputy Attorney General may exercise all the duties of that office. And for the purpose of Section 3345 of Title V, the Deputy Attorney General is the first assistant to the Attorney General. How hard is that? There's one more paragraph. When by reason of absence, disability, or vacancy in office, neither the Attorney General nor the Deputy Attorney General is available. Well, that is not the case now because we do have a deputy that's available. His name's Rod Rosenstein. But in case Rod was out, then the Associate Attorney General acts as Attorney General. The Attorney General may designate the Solicitor General. That's that Noel Francisco dude. And the Assistant Attorneys General in further order of succession. So we don't have that situation. We don't have a situation where the deputy isn't available. So that second paragraph is moot. It doesn't apply. You don't really have to read it, but I read it to you. So let's not confuse ourselves. Here is the vacancy in the office of Attorney General. The deputy takes over. This president has decided to select a staffer, somebody who's not been Senate confirmed, to have all the awesome powers of the Attorney General of the United States. This is bizarre. Even Fox, Judge Andrew Napolitano, had to try to explain to the news model this morning, you can't do this.
You're saying that the guy the president has appointed is not qualified?
Is not legally qualified.
What does he need?
I'll tell you.
The president's got lawyers. They looked at that.
There's only three ways a person can.
Wait.
Attorney General. Okay. That's it. Is one if you are the.
Wait. I can't. The president has lawyers. The Attorney General of the United States of America is not the president's lawyer. The White House counsel is not the president's lawyer. They are the lawyers for the United States of America. The reason why we have a White House counsel is to make sure the president follows all the laws while he's in the White House. He is not the counsel to the president. That's number one. But the awesome job of the Attorney General of the United States certainly is not to be the president's personal attorney. And this man is not legally in a position to take this office because there is a deputy attorney general who's available. This is what they have to try and explain to the news models.
Saying that the guy the president has appointed is not qualified?
Is not legally qualified.
What does he need?
I'll tell you.
The president's got lawyers. They looked at that.
There's only three ways a person can become acting attorney general.
Okay.
That is one, if you are the deputy attorney general, Rod Rosenstein. The president signs an executive order and makes you acting. Two is if you are already in the DOJ and have a job that requires Senate confirmation and you have received confirmation. That is not the case with Matt Whitaker because he's the chief of staff. That does not require Senate confirmation. Three is a recess appointment, which is not relevant here because the Senate is not in recess. So with deference and respect to what the president is trying to do, he has every right to have whoever he wants run the Justice Department. He has chosen someone who does not qualify under the law to be the acting attorney general.
So
of the
he's
United
really
States.
not the acting attorney general.
Which is why he did not take an oath of office.
I mean, when they're having to explain on Fox News the paragraph I just read to you because they refuse to understand that the Attorney General of the United States is not the president's lawyer and that there are only three ways to become the acting Attorney General, and that is if you're the Deputy Attorney General or if you've been Senate confirmed or if this is a recess appointment. None of those things apply. Holy crap. I mean, this is a third world country. It is literally a banana republic. And I have to tell you, people are freaked out. Matt Miller, he used to work in that office and he's telling this is worse than Watergate. This is 10 times. Why is it worse than Watergate? Well, for starters, it's worse than Watergate because Nixon broke into the Democratic National Committee as an American. Here, we're talking about a foreign government breaking into the Democratic National Committee. That's for starters.
The country tonight is in the midst of what may be the most serious constitutional crisis in its history.
An investigator appointed to investigate scandals was fired because he insisted on investigating scandals.
I'm joined by NBC presidential historian Michael Beschloss. Thanks for being here tonight.
Pleasure.
Midterm election. Firing of Jeff Sessions, replaced by what looks like a loyalist who's on the record for narrowing this probe. Where does this rank in comparison to Nixon?
Ari, if this is going the way it looks, this is 10 times worse than Nixon. Because, let's look if this leads to, let's say, the firing of Robert Mueller or the substantial limiting of this investigation, 10 times worse than Nixon. Because let's look at what Donald Trump has done here. Let's first look at the Supreme Court. He now has a 5-justice majority on the Supreme Court. The 5th justice is the one person of all those people on that Federalist Society list that has the most extreme views of permitting a president not to be investigated, not to be indicted, not to be subpoenaed, use pardons to help himself. There's no doubt in my mind that the reason why Brett Kavanaugh is on the court tonight is because Donald Trump wanted him to be reliable if a Trump case could come to the court. And remember, that was a vacancy that Donald Trump created by encouraging Anthony Kennedy maybe to resign from the court earlier than expected, so that it would be Brett Kavanaugh in this position tonight and not Anthony Kennedy, who might have been a little bit more of in a position to stand up to Donald Trump. And then on the other side, this is a president who is now looks as if he's very directly, not only firing the attorney general and putting in someone to replace him who is by most accounts not terribly qualified, by some accounts a political hack, by almost all accounts someone who can be relied upon to be completely obedient to President Trump. And then the other thing that makes it worse than Nixon is that, this is not just about misdeeds within our system. Nixon obstructed justice, told the FBI, told the CIA to tell the FBI not to investigate Watergate. The case we're dealing with is a possible covert relationship between an American president and a hostile foreign power.
That is scary. And that is why this is so third world. You put the shooting and the gunning down of people on the streets, in bars, in synagogues, in churches, in schools. You take all the violence and all the availability of weaponry and guns and a polarized, divided, bitter, broken nation with a president who breaks the law, a president who goes outside the law, a president who is willing to obstruct justice, a president who violates, statutes and codes repeatedly, a president who violates the Hatch Act, a president who violates the Posse Comitatus Act, a president who, violates the Emoluments Clause of the Constitution, all these things. And what you have here is a third world country. And everyone agrees that this president is playing fast and loose with the law.
How does someone like Rod Rosenstein now report to someone who Robert Costa covered and moderated a debate with called a rah-rah Republican? How does someone like Rod Rosenstein report to and turn the Mueller probe over to someone like Whitaker?
So Rod's going to have to make a decision about how fully Whitaker gets briefed. And the way Washington works is you brief your chain of command. So Whitaker's going to need a full briefing on everything Rosenstein knows right now about the special counsel investigation. And that's going to get interesting because even though Whitaker's been out publicly saying that Mueller's crossed a red line, he's done so without understanding what Mueller's got. And so I suppose there's still a possibility that if Rosenstein gives him a full briefing, that there might be sufficient connections to all of the finances that Mueller is looking at and the idea of Russian collusion that Whitaker will have to say, I see the linkage. They're inextricably linked. They're linked to Russia, and I see why we need to move on with this. But I have to tell you, let's go back to what Chuck said. I think we're watching obstruction of justice play out right in plain sight. I fear there's a quid pro quo. You do this, I name you acting attorney general, or I nominate you for attorney general. You take care of the special counsel investigation, and that's public corruption.
So you add in to the violence on the street, the fact that police will extrajudicially kill predominantly African American people, but then you have the citizenry that's armed to the teeth that will kill each other, right? In a civil war type, situation. You have a president who refuses to obey the law as written, who picks cronies and quid pro quo situations. You cover my ass, I will make you the Attorney General of the United States. This man, this Whitaker guy, has to get briefed on what Mueller has by Rod Rosenstein, who is the only other person outside of the Mueller investigation who knows what Mueller has. Now you're going to tell a flunky, a staffer, you're going to tell a guy who's not Senate confirmed, you're going to make him a principal officer in charge of the most awesome law enforcement agency that this these United States have without Senate confirmation, and you're going to force Rod Rosenstein to brief him on what Mueller has so that this guy Whitaker can witness tamper. He can tell Donald Trump how to lie or how to escape the charges that Mueller is likely to bring against Junior, or the charges that he's likely to bring against, the president himself, the indictment, whatever. And he can deny the subpoena. He can deny the indictment. And then the report goes to him and he can sit on it. He cannot even release it. Combine that with the inability to vote. It's all here. Bad elections, lawless president, lawless population, militarized police force, propaganda machine, Fox News, thousands of hours of AM talk radio, all the. What are people waiting to see that they haven't seen in order to determine that America is going down the Banana Republic road? Transfer of wealth from the working people to the wealthy people, the oligarchs, etc. Just make a list. Bad elections, lawless president, lawless police, militarized police, propaganda machine. What are you waiting to see?
It's the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Yeah, so the Constitution really does put some limits on this. Justice Clarence Thomas, who's President Trump's kind of favorite justice on the court, just a few years ago wrote an opinion that said, the Senate has to confirm principal officers like the Attorney General.
Yeah.
It can't just be that the president can just install whoever he wants in that. And Justice Thomas's idea there, and he says the word corruption, he says, what if the president is corrupt?
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to have a circumstance in which anyone could go and exercise the full powers of, say, the Attorney General, a cabinet officer, or something like that. There's a point to Senate confirmation. And this is, I think, a very tough thing for President Trump, who said he wants to strictly construe the Constitution and be guided by the founders' intent. As Justice Thomas says, that intent is really pretty clear. I mean, the guy who is now the acting Attorney General is not the person like the Deputy Attorney General who was Senate confirmed, Rod Rosenstein, or the Solicitor General, Noel Francisco, who was Senate confirmed. It's like a staffer. And, that's unusual. We've not seen that before. I mean, this is the Attorney General of the United States with all of the massive powers incumbent, and it's being, handled by effectively a constitutional nobody.
Wow. That's Neil Katyal, and he wrote the independent counsel statute. So I think he knows a thing or two about who can and can't be the independent counsel and who can and can't be the acting attorney general. And obviously, I just read you the law. There is a succession order. President can't just pick a staffer, which is what he did here. And you know how he found Whitaker in the first place? This is the sickest, saddest story about third world country, about Banana Republic, decision making that this president engages in. Okay. Neil Katyal, Whitaker literally was, I don't know if you remember Sam Clovis. Sam Clovis was running the Trump campaign foreign policy team. Sam Clovis is from Iowa. He was the guy who picked George Papadopoulos. He's the guy who picked Carter Page. To put their names on, to put them into the foreign policy shop, because Donald Trump had no foreign policy acumen, experience, intellect, intelligence. He had no understanding of the world. And people were starting to ask Donald Trump questions about Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria and all these far-flung places, and Russia and China and everything. And the president had no earthly idea. So Sam Clovis, who was working on the Trump campaign, put together this foreign policy shop with Jeff Sessions in Northern Virginia. And Clovis from Iowa is the guy who put together this foreign policy shop. Well, it turns out that Whitaker, when Sam Clovis was running in Iowa for treasurer, you had this Whitaker dude be the campaign manager for Sam Clovis. And that's how he got close to President Trump. But he didn't get anything after Trump was elected. He came up empty. So he literally moved from Iowa to New York City, Whitaker did. So he could get some. Clovis told him, why don't you go to one of the networks and become a legal analyst? And then Trump will see you on TV. So what you need to do is sign up as a legal analyst for one of the channels, and then Donald Trump will see you. Go there and you defend him, constantly defend him, and Donald Trump will see you, and he'll want to put you into the White House. And that's exactly what Whitaker did. He moved to New York City, and he got a job as a CNN analyst, a legal analyst. And he defended everything Donald Trump ever said or did. Donald Trump saw him on the TV, called him up, brought him into the White House, and made him chief of staff to Jeff Sessions. He is a constitutional nobody, meaning he's not Senate confirmed. He's just a staffer. And now he's in charge of the most awesome law enforcement apparatus that this country has, the Attorney General's office, where the Mueller investigation reports, where the FBI reports, where everybody in law enforcement goes back to the Attorney General. I mean, it's unbelievable. And this guy is willing to tell Donald Trump everything and anything that Mueller might have after he's briefed by Rod Rosenstein, who's been supervising Mueller. The reason why Mueller has to be supervised is because Mueller is an inferior officer. He is not a principal. The Attorney General is a principal. The Treasurer, the Cabinet, everyone in the Cabinet is a principal, okay? Education, EPA, you name it, they're Senate confirmed and they're principal officers. The Chief of Staff to the Attorney General is an inferior officer, and he's appointed by the head of the department, and he's not subject to advise and consent by the Senate. Same thing with Mueller. The reason why Mueller is legally allowed to be Mueller is because Mueller is an inferior officer who is supervised by a Senate-confirmed principal. And that Senate-confirmed principal was supposed to be Jeff Sessions, but he recused. So then the job fell to the deputy because of this, statute, 28 U.S. Code 508. I told you there's an order here, and so the deputy takes over. So Rod has been supervising Mueller. Now that the president thinks he's going to get his way, Rod would have to brief this this constitutional nobody who has not been confirmed and give him the keys to Mueller's kingdom. Which is why today we finally have news that Mueller is right now writing his final report. Now, what happens to that report? That report goes to, if we have an attorney general, goes to that attorney general, unrecused, right? If it goes to it's supposed to go to the attorney general. In this instance, it was going to go to the deputy, Rod Rosenstein. It may just end up in Whitaker's hot little hands, and this guy is a conservative operative. He is not Senate confirmed. He is not in a position to be read into this, and he certainly isn't in a position to take this report because there is nothing in the independent counsel statute that requires that report that Mueller eventually writes be made public. Nothing. This is scary stuff. I'm telling you, this is just so outside the norms of American law and order. And every time I hear them talk about law and order, I just want to vomit.
How can Whitaker hamstring this investigation if, and that is still an if he chooses to do so?
The very simple way would not be to fire Bob Mueller. That everyone's worried for a long time that the president would somehow find a way to get rid of Mueller. That wouldn't be the way to do it. It wouldn't be the smart way. It'd be disruptive. It would lead to mass protests. The smart way would be to just simply say no. When Mueller comes and seeks approval to indict people, to say no. If Mueller finishes with a report, the new acting AG could say, thank you for that report. I'm going to take it under advisement and put it in a desk drawer and never turn it over to Congress. Even if Mueller has found strong evidence that the president committed a crime that's worthy of impeachment, the acting attorney general could simply decide to sit on that, and there would be and resist turning it over to Congress. I really think, for the president to have made this choice, there ought to be strong calls now for Matt Whitaker, given both what he said about this investigation in the past, and given that the president has now picked him to oversee an investigation into himself. There ought to be very strong calls for him to recuse himself and leave this investigation to Deputy Attorney General, who's been supervising all along.
All right, now you think about this, okay? You think about this. We have elections that are run by people who are actually on the ballot, okay? They are overseeing their own elections. How banana republic is that? Now you have an investigation into a foreign conspiracy, a foreign, hostile government conspiring with the president's son, the president's campaign, Paul Manafort, he's guilty, lying, paying off women, violating campaign laws, all that. And the president is going to put somebody in charge of it who's loyal to him, not the law. I mean, how far down this road do you want to go? Now, here's what I would do. If I were Bob Mueller, today, tomorrow, whenever, because, well, the elections aren't really over in Arizona. I mean, the voting is done. The counting isn't. And it just does depend who counts it, doesn't it? But the elections are over, so the quiet period has passed. The only thing I can find in the law that would require Congress, and by that I mean the House of Representatives, which we don't have till January, but we do have coming our way as a check, is for Mueller to issue a subpoena and or an indictment while this Whitaker dude is acting as something. Because if he says no to a subpoena, then it goes to Congress to find out why he said no. That's the beauty of the Constitution. That's what checks and balances is all about. So if a subpoena is issued and Whitaker says, no, I'm not allowing Mueller to serve this subpoena, Congress would then have to become involved because they could then ask Whitaker why he denied the special counsel the special counsel his subpoena. And they would call him in front of, the Judiciary Committee, I'm guessing, which is now headed by Gerald Nadler. Well, not now, but, we have to go through this lame duck thing. It's just going to be a nightmare. This is when all the really dirty stuff happens, right? Because you got the bitter enders who are on the way out with nothing to lose. And lobbyists, lobby shop jobs waiting for them on the other side. And they have to prove themselves to, these lobby shops, these giant law firms that are really just nothing but lobby shops, right? So you got that looking, staring you. And Congress comes back into session next week in a lame duck. So God only knows what we're in store for next week. But like I said, open your eyes and smell the banana republic. Smell the third world nature of America. It has happened. We're there. Everybody's waiting. What does a constitutional crisis look like, feel like, smell like this? This is it. You have a lawless president putting staffers in charge of the freaking Attorney General's office, the Justice Department, a staffer, not Senate confirmed, who's going to get briefed on everything Mueller's got so he can witness tamper with the president being the witness that he's tampering with, right? Just like Manafort did. Make phone calls, tell them what they got. Obstruction of justice at the very minimum. Elections that we don't trust, that are just off the rails. It's bad. Buy a stinking podcast.